Kashimo is a monster. The start of the CUlling games, everything had hyped up Kashimo and Higuruma as the two big bad bosses that our main cast will have to take on once we start the CUlling games. Now that we have begun and both their conflict has been done as well as the Sendai colony, I believe the person who left the biggest mark out of all the CUlling games antagonists is Hajime Kashimo. What made Hajime Kashimo so interesting is the start and obviously the hype for him as a character. So before the CUlling games had started, we saw brief indications of him, and he was the first person to make a rule in the CUlling games. His rule with using his 100 points, it would allow other players to access information about other players. This means they could get their full names, amount of points and rules a player has added to their current colony. This allowed him to begin to finally look for Sukuna in which he wanted to do, and it allowed our main cast to set up for each of their conflicts coming into the CUlling games. But before that, I think what makes Hajime such an interesting person is one of the more dangerous 400-year sorcerers that we have. Him, Ryu and Uro in my opinion just seem to be on a level above compared to some of the sorcerers, with Higuruma just close behind, but I think what made Hajime such an interesting character stems from even his backstory. We know that he's an incarnated sorcerer who made a deal with Kenjaku. However, with what his deal was and what we got from that backstory was he wanted to fight Sukuna. So he already inhabits the traits to become a top tier Jujutsu sorceress, and he's chasing after people stronger than he is. This was evident in his first introduction in the CUlling games. With every person he seemed to have destroyed, he would say that they were too weak. In this essence, it made the fight against him and Hakari one of the more entertaining fights, but before we get to that, I think it spoke volumes to him and his personality. I think the fact that, and before I briefly go to touch on his powers and abilities, I think that we got to see somebody who doesn't have a domain expansion, didn't even use a curse technique, and showed high level of combat intelligence and close quarter combat that is honestly one of the scariest that we've seen in the series. It makes the anticipation for his eventual one-time technique for Sukuna be so much more interesting because you've seen how dangerous he is with just curse energy manipulation. Now let's go to his powers and abilities. So this is the thing which I think is most interesting about Hajime, and like I just said, he uses only his curse energy which has the properties of electricity. Obviously not done with Hakari was unfortunately Hakari had overwhelming curse energy that he could prevent the static shock from his hits. However, for the majority of regular sorcerers, and evident in the panda fight, his reinforced curse energy attacks have a static shock effect on impact, meaning they become static and they can't even react to the blow, making it basically near to impossible to defend against. Then he uses his ability of lightning discharge, which he builds up electrical charges eventually to use on impact. I think there is a misconception that people think he can just spam them. No, he has to wait for them to charge. By charging up said electricity, he then gains the ability to use powerful lightning strikes that basically have the same effect of a guaranteed hit from a domain expansion. I think this highlights more to the fact of why he doesn't have a domain expansion, and I hope this could be potential something that Gege will show in the future. Right now, Hajime is the first person that we've seen who has an elemental curse energy type. So in the future, we could potentially see a fire type, maybe wind type, or even ice type. And I think these could speak volumes to how different curse energy could be used. He also has a simple domain and hollow wicker basket, which is shown to negate obviously sure hits abilities. Him not using it against Hakari is because of the properties of his domain, with his domain being a sure hit effect that only affects himself, compared to somebody such as Mahito who has a sure kill effect which would affect the other person. Hollow Wicker Basket would be able to prevent obviously Mahito's domain, however Hakari's is a special one which negates the effect of a tug of war, shown in the databook extra. What makes him dangerous is how he uses his electrical properties. The thing is, he overpowers people with close quarter combat, that him adding his ability of electricity is more just overkill. For the majority of Jujutsu sorcerers, and only finally we got to see how far Hakari could get pushed with having a person like Hajime fight him, it was shown with the fact that he can use multiple different abilities that can kill people in one go. His use of the staff, which can obviously conduct electricity, gave him a level of versatility that not many Jujutsu sorcerers have, and he can plant it in different spots while conduct electrical charges to attack his enemies. Moreover, his use of close quarter combat is probably one of the highest that we've seen in the series, arguably the best that we've seen right now. are the people such as Sukuna and Gojo, who we obviously only see them really just stomp on people, so we didn't really get to actually see their martial art skills. However, his martial art with his electrical properties, it makes him one of the most dangerous opponents that we've seen. In my opinion, the strongest antagonist currently in the CUlling games. Moreover, we have to talk about his durability. I think his durability has become extremely underrated, and this is obviously evident with 1. He completely tanked an unblockable drumming beat from Panda. This was his strongest attack, and he said it's not bad, indicating how durable he is. Moreover, the multiple of blows that he took from somebody such as Hakari, who was in his jackpot having that amount of damage, it shows how Hajime's durability is one of his strongest feats as well, being able to tank a lot and dish out a lot of damage back as well. This concludes with his obviously IQ. He arguably has one of the strongest battle IQ we've seen in the series. However, that is evident with a lot of people that we've seen obviously in JJK. But what I think is done well is his ability to use his IQ in tandem with his curse energy properties of electricity. A good example, and let's look at the fight against Hakari, like I talked about with the use of the staff. This was one of the craziest feats that I think he's used, and with the fact that he was on the back foot at that period of the fight, by being able to use something that he had planned ahead forward in the fight to use as an advantage. Moreover, his ability to even use the environment. He's jumping up on things, he's using crates and stuff to his side, he's using the environment to the fullest to be able to damage his opponents, and I think that in tandem with someone such as Hakari gave us such an elite back and forth fight. I think I'm going to speak more of his close quarter combat. I mean, his ability to counteract even the parts when Hakari was taking advantage. I mean, he would use a flying knee, he would use a spinning elbow to counteract. Anytime he thinks he's about to get close, he would parry attacks into grappling situations to land elbows and knees and etc. And I think this is such an underrated aspect because of how fast-paced the fight is. You don't really pay attention to those little key moments where Hajime uses different things with his body to be able to overpower such a dangerous opponent such as Hakari. And I think when we get to a latter situation where he begins to fight again, I think we're going to demonstrate how dangerous opponent Hajime is. And I think for the majority of Jujutsu sorcerers, if they come up against this lightning electricity freak, they are dying. His mentality fits him as a fighter perfectly. He has the ruthlessness, the confidence, and there is no real self-doubt in him. Like every part of the fight, it was, I'm going to overpower this guy. Even though the odds are against me, I'm going to kill this immortal being. I think that shows the level you need to be able to get to a point where you can beat the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers. And I think this nicely moves on to his obviously future plotline, and that is obviously with Sukuna. So him wanting to fight Sukuna, and even though people may believe his curse technique can do something against Sukuna, until I see it, I don't believe it. The reason for this is because we've seen so many people in the series amp themselves up to get destroyed by the strongest people. How many times did Jogo overgas himself, go fight Gojo, then get packed up, go fight Sukuna, realize, oh my, the 8-9 fingers maybe is far bigger than I thought. I think these nuances are important, and it could give us an indication to Hajime, who may be just gassing himself too much. However, the thing that goes for him is he's an old age sorcerer who has fought his fair share of battles. Obviously not to the person somebody such as Sukuna and what the story is indicating to us, but the fact that he has this one-time technique indicates that it could be something of big interest. Could it be something that is a binding vow that makes him not use his curse technique forever until this final use? Or is it somebody such as like a transformation similar to like Killua with Godspeed that does something completely different that we're not expecting? Regardless of this, I think this plotline is interesting, and the fact that we have Kashimo now teaming up with somebody such as Hakari in the main cast, I think this is going to be an important thing, and he's going to become a better character as we go on in the series. Now the next plotline I want to see, and this is more of a what if situation. If Hajime was to fight Higuruma, would his ability still override his? Let's talk about it. We know that Higuruma and his ability of the court thing, and if his court goes successfully, he will confiscate the individual's curse technique. Obviously with Yuji, he didn't have a curse technique, so it confiscated his curse energy. However, we know that Hajime has a curse technique, and he would then assume to still have his curse energy. But the issue is, even though we know that removing of your curse technique, harder for you to control your curse energy. With Hajime potentially not using his curse technique at all, would that mean that his curse energy won't really be affected because he doesn't use his curse technique anyway? This is brief headcanon, and it's just a question I want to ask you guys, and it was something I was thinking about if he was to fight with Higuruma. Obviously, physical stats is far beyond and you'll be able to beat him, but obviously with the properties of domain expansions, being able to change that, and with Hollow Wicker Basket wouldn't be able to affect with his being a different type domain, not a short kill effect, it could be an interesting matchup that I would like to see get explained in the future, but that's just me kind of theorizing. And the final thing that I think could be interesting in his story is his potential link up with the old age sorcerers such as Ryu and Uro. I think with them being from ancient sorcerers as well, I'd like to see their dynamic between each other and the potential use of them in the olden age Jujutsu sorcery. I think the fact that we could get some interesting flashbacks with some new characters who in my opinion have been some of the most entertaining ones, and it hasn't made me feel as if I miss our main cast too much because there have been great new characters that have been added. Regardless of this, Hajime is a monster. I mean, he is crazy. His ability, his mentality, everything that he's done has indicated that he is one of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers for a reason. Excited to see what Gege does with his story, and if you guys like this video and want to see more type videos like this, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and thank you guys for watching.